Mountains, rivers and streams, forests and wildlife, all are important elements of Wyoming's natural environment. With the many activities of man, there is potential for numerous conflicts. One goal here is to raise your awareness of environmental concerns related to highway reconstruction. Another goal is to help you understand why these concerns are important and how you can play a positive role in addressing these issues. We'll consider ways to avoid or minimize impacts, wildlife and fisheries, pollution prevention, reclamation and landscaping, public responsiveness, and visual aesthetics. While building a better, safer road, highway construction projects include provisions to prevent or decrease damage to the environment. Poor construction practices without mitigation can have long-term consequences, such as destroying wildlife and fish habitat, increasing the potential for flood damage, degrading stream bank protection, and lowering water quality. If everyone works to avoid or minimize these impacts, we can ensure our children will have an environment they can enjoy.
WYDOT recognizes its responsibility for the protection of the environment. Embodied within the Department's strategic plan is the requirement that the state transportation system is designed, constructed, and maintained in a manner that is sensitive to the environment. These requirements reflect the strong commitment the American public has for a quality environment.
There are numerous environmental regulations that apply to highway construction, and we must be aware of the penalties for failing to comply. In enforcing the Clean Water Act, the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality regulates the discharge of pollutants to bodies of water. Violations are subject to a large fine and imprisonment. Under the Archaeological Resource Protection Act, civil penalties may result if artifacts are disturbed without being reported. The U.S. Forest Service has the authority to limit or suspend work if significant harm is inflicted on forest lands. The Army Corps of Engineers regulates wetlands and waters. Failure to abide by environmental regulations can result in delays and substantial costs.
Wyoming contractors are doing a good job in being environmentally sensitive on the projects that they are working on. Today it has become a more sensitive issue as we do learn the impact that the ecosystems have on each other, and it's just important to look at that and continue to be creative in the way that we solve the problems to protect the environment and continue building Wyoming to be the best that it can be.
Avoidance and minimization of impacts. It's better and cheaper to avoid or minimize impacts to sensitive areas than it is to restore an impacted area. It's relatively easy to revegetate a disturbed site with grass, but it's much more expensive to reestablish trees and shrubs, with many years required for maturation. If we can make an effort to save vegetation where possible, not only will it be a cost savings, but it will minimize erosion, maintain the aesthetic value of the area, and preserve wildlife habitat. Use extra caution to avoid disturbances to rivers, streams, and wetlands. If you are unsure if an area is classified as a wetland, stop and ask. Wetlands are shown on the project plans. A little bit of time spent avoiding or minimizing disturbance will more than make up for the reclamation. Minimize damage to the work area. If heavy equipment can avoid a location, it should be a priority. When building topsoil stockpiles, disturb as little ground as possible by keeping in a single travel path. Don't operate equipment outside staked construction limits. Don't let fill material spill outside the staked slope limits. Wildlife and fisheries. Wildlife provides tremendous enjoyment to Wyoming residents and draws people to the state for hunting and viewing. Valuable habitat is often located adjacent to highways, and accordingly, highway construction should be conducted in a manner that avoids harm to wildlife. Be alert for wildlife on the road and slow down in areas where wildlife are known to cross, especially the early morning and evening low light hours when wildlife movements increase. If you come across a carcass on the road, please notify a WYDOT official. Note the milepost or any obvious landmark so they can remove it. carcasses draw carnivores and raptors to the road, creating further hazards to drivers and wildlife alike. Work may be restricted to protect wildlife in certain areas, and time restrictions may be imposed for birthing, nesting, and feeding times. Being aware of these restrictions and abiding by them is critical for wildlife protection. Don't harass the wildlife, and of course, poaching is illegal and will result in prosecution. Special procedures may be required in areas inhabited by a threatened or endangered species, such as the bald eagle and grizzly bear. Following proper procedures will assure the project does not threaten these species and will assist in their continued recovery. Wyoming's waterways provide numerous recreational opportunities for sightseers, rafters, and anglers. Waterway crossings should maintain natural stream conditions. Where fish use streams for habitat, passage, spawning, or migration, structures are designed to minimize stream bed disturbance and maintain proper water velocities and depths. Pollution prevention. Sediment is normally the largest quantity pollutant generated on a construction project. Rivers naturally carry sediment load, but increased sediment can also cloud the water and reduce light. This can have a negative effect on light-dependent organisms for photosynthesis and for fish seeking food. Current law controls sediment amounts and other pollutants that can wash off construction sites greater than 5 acres. A stormwater pollution prevention plan must be prepared and followed on construction projects to avoid or minimize erosion and prevent pollution. Please consider, erosion and production of sediments occurs easily from ground that is stripped of vegetative cover. Vegetated areas serve as buffer zones between disturbed ground and streams to slow stormwater and trap sediments. Therefore, leave all vegetation in place except when disturbing it is absolutely necessary. Make sure stormwater control devices are in place before work begins and regularly inspect and maintain them. These simple steps will avoid or minimize construction sediment from entering streams. Minimize the time erodible earth is exposed. After disturbing an area, bring it to final grade and reclaim it as quickly as possible. Clean spills, fix leaks, pick up trash, and maintain spill prevention devices at all fuel and oil storage areas, maintenance areas, and ready lines. Follow the pollution prevention plan that has been produced for the project. WYDOT can modify the plan if shortcomings are detected during inspections. Reclamation. Revegetation provides erosion control, which preserves roadbed integrity. It's particularly important in scenic areas for improving the visual aesthetics of the highway. Revegetation on cut and fill slopes is of primary importance for improving appearance of disturbed areas. Slopes that are continually eroding into a ditch or drainage are not acceptable from a maintenance or an environmental standpoint. Public responsiveness. By being aware of the environment in which you are working, you can better address public concern. If you don't feel comfortable addressing the concerns of the traveler, please refer them to WYDOT's resident engineer or other persons familiar with project details. Visual aesthetics. In highly scenic areas, it's important to make the highway blend in and seem as unobtrusive as possible. This is done not only to enhance the driving pleasure of the motorist, but also to avoid detracting from the experience of people recreating on adjacent land. Techniques employed to help the highway visually blend with the environment include selecting the facing of retaining walls so the color and texture will blend in rather than contrast with the surrounding environment. Avoiding massiveness by balancing bridge superstructure and substructure units. Using a dull, non-reflective surface on the back of signs and guardrails. Varying slope ratio and distances. Laying back the draws and rounding the top of the cuts to help highway slopes blend with the natural topography. Including rocks and deadfall on highway slopes so they don't appear quite so smooth and constructed. Using rock-lined or reinforced turf drainage channels rather than concrete chutes. thinning of trees adjacent to the highway to reduce contrast between dense forest and cleared slope, and using rock blasting techniques that produce a sculpted, natural-looking rock face instead of a stark, flat, and artificial-looking rock face. Of course, the rock face must still be competent and have reduced potential for rockfall. Methods used to blend the highway into its environment are selected following extensive research and planning. Projects in environmentally sensitive areas take years of careful planning and design. WYDOT works hard to establish an effective relationship with the Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and other cooperating agencies. An effective working relationship between WYDOT and its contractors strives to ensure that environmental concerns are met. Through your efforts and ours, we can continue to preserve Wyoming's unique environment.